Following up on that last line of question, I guess asked the administrator, who frankly is new to the position within a year, so a lot of this has happened on other people's watch, and she's working hard, I think, to correct that is what I'm hearing. But with regard to the salaries, that's been a big issue in the financial debate. So how are you anticipating dealing with that with some of the CDC programs?
These excessive salaries are deeply disturbing, and for exactly the reasons that the Inspector General just described, these are nonprofits, and any excesses are supposed to be reinvested in community development. And if they are not, this is inappropriate and has to change. We are responsible for oversight of these CDCs, and the way we are now preparing new guidelines on corporate governance to address exactly this issue.
Follow it on. I guess I'd ask the IG. You've talked a little bit about the hub zone issue with the courts interpreting it one way versus another. I guess be interested in what direction you're looking for from the Congress, and frankly, I'd be interested in Ms. Mills' response to that also.
Well, in all candor, that was actually Administrator Mills who talked about the hub zone. But while
chat away.
While I'm here, the one thing I do want to point out, without getting into a policy debate on priorities of these programs, we have long-standing concerns about the ability to really enforce the hub zone. Just to put it out there, hub zone is a difficult animal to get a hold of because it's hard to figure out where these companies, the majority of the employees live, you know, whether they're really attempting to maintain the statistics that they have to as far as how many employees live in an economically disadvantaged area and stuff. So so this would be preferential treatment for the program that we think is hardest to really enforce and very hard. Administrator Mills talked about an enhanced bid protest procedure. A lot of times these things are kind of dependent on the person who loses the bid to protest, and it's really hard for a losing bidder to know exactly where these companies are, especially in the really limited amount of time they have to do the protest. And so those are the concerns that I personally that I have as IG on this. But
Ms. Mills, would you comment then, please?
Yes. The SBA and the White House support the congressional intent of parity or equal treatment among the contracting programs, which is 8A, Hub Zone, Service-Disabled Veterans, and the Women-Owned Small Business. The concern is that there was a recent court decision that potentially undermines the policy because it interpreted the Small Business Act to provide for a Hub Zone preference. We support, as the administration, the legislative efforts which would confirm Congress's original intent to provide for parity.
All right, very good. A little different strain. We've chatted before, Administrator Mills, about some of the existing small business programs, and there's been an interest both in Congress and the administration to increase some of the levels of opportunity within the 7A and 504 programs. And we've had a conversation about larger small businesses and smaller small businesses, and talked a little bit about making sure that some of the smaller small businesses had enough in the pot that they could compete for, because some of the larger small businesses could eat up a lot of the increases that we both, you know, could argue about the number, but think are important. Could you address that? How do you see us addressing that going forward?
The President and the administration has asked Congress to consider raising the loan limits on 7A and 504 to $5 million, currently $2 million loan limits. The reason for this is that there's a gap in the marketplace. Many of the institutions that did do these larger loans for warehouses, for financing some of these business development companies, are not in that in the market anymore. And so there is enormous pressure from everyone from car dealerships and franchisees, manufacturers, to who have capped out at the $2 million limit. The concern was raised by yourself and also by the chairwoman really from the start that this would crowd out the smaller loans. And the smaller loans are really extraordinarily important at the SBA, and this is the Main Street small business who, you know, we serve as the core, a core of what we do. So one of the things that has been suggested is that we cap the number of these jumbo loans that would be allowed so that we serve that market, but we do not allow it to crowd out the smaller loan. And I think the concern is that these are more profitable loans and they're bigger and they're easier to do, and that the banks might not pay attention to the smaller loan, and we cannot let that happen.
I appreciate that. I yield back.